After having a vasectomy after our first child, my wife got pregnant 4 years later. We spent 2 years together in college and got married the fall after we graduated. Spent 2 years exploring our relationship and finally got settled down and was ready to raise a family. She got off birth control and her libido took off, but it took 3 years for us to get pregnant, but we got a beautiful girl finally. After a couple of months, my wife got back on birth control and had a hard time with it. Her doctor switched her meds several times, but she had bad side effects with each one. We talked about it and were unsure if we wanted another child, and since it was easier for me to get a vasectomy reversed later if we decided to have more children, I had the operation. That was 3 years ago, and after coming off birth control my wife has felt better and sex has been worry-free since we can no longer get pregnant. We actually have sex more now than when we were in college. Then 3 weeks ago my wife was late for her period, which isn't that unusual for her. Then I noticed her breasts were a little tender and she started what seemed like signs of morning sickness. Now I know there have been cases of nature reversing vasectomy. So I went to the doctor and had my sperm count checked and the verdict was I'm still sterile. But I didn't tell my wife. Wife finally went to her doctor and confirmed she was pregnant, and so she had me go to my doctor to get tested. I didn't go right away because I was literally sick from the stress of the situation. I had all sorts of sick scenarios going through my head. In the end I got retested and I took my daughter in and had a DNA test done. Lawyer update. X200B. My lawyer is awesome. She had me bring in a bunch of paperwork, bank statements, and my medical and DNA results and had me tell her my story. Her assistant sat in with us and took notes while my lawyer went through my documents. After I finished she asked a few questions and spelled out my options. I live in an at-fault state, which is good and bad. Good as in it gives us leverage, bad as it takes longer and much more expensive. In the case of the first child, if my wife agrees to sign the papers my liability for child support is an easy fix. If she doesn't agree then a court-ordered DNA test and a judgment from the court can remove me without my wife's consent. Either way, I will most likely not have to pay child support. One way is just more expensive than the other. Since my wife has a good job and earns close to what I do, she didn't think the judge would award her any alimony. And all of that plus dividing up property and other things can be negotiated before a judge gets involved. The bad news was due to the holidays they couldn't have the papers ready before Christmas, but definitely would before the end of the year. She advised me to say nothing until she got served. She gave me a list of things to do before and after Christmas before they served my wife. One thing they did point out was since we were actively trying to have a baby there was a possibility that my wife didn't know that the child wasn't mine. My wife has an appointment with her OB tomorrow. Update 1. TL doctor. After having a vasectomy after our first child, my wife got pregnant 4 years later. I go to get tested to make sure I'm still sterile, I am and not the father, and then decide to test our daughter, not mine. I had to wait till after Christmas to have her served. So I met my sister at my house and we started moving my stuff to her house while the divorce goes through, or at least until my STBXW leaves and I get possession of the house. We took 4 carloads to her house and came back for the rest. My sister felt it important for her to be there for support and as a witness. I also moved the nanny cam into the living room so it could record everything in the cloud. At about 10:45 a.m. I got a text from the lawyer saying she had been served. I sent her an email saying that I am at the house when she is ready to talk. A couple of minutes later I got a text from my wife saying why, blah blah blah. So I resent the first text and waited for her to get home. She sent several texts and voicemails. They don't mention anything about cheating, just how she thought we were working this out and she thought we would sit down and have a conversation before proceeding with the divorce, playing the family card, and how this will devastate the child and our families. How she feels betrayed. That was a good one. She was still sharing her location, and it took her 20 minutes before she left work. She then stopped at a nearby Walgreens for a few minutes. The purpose of the stop at Walgreens became clear as a police car pulled in behind her in the driveway. According to the officers, she got the police there because she said she was afraid and that we had guns in the house. I showed the officers my empty gun safe and said that I had removed them to another secure location. We went back to the living room and I showed my wife the paternity test that I had done that showed her daughter was not mine. Her response was denial and disbelief, which appeared genuine. She broke down and cried for about 10 minutes. I told her this was the final straw and why I wanted the divorce. At about that time, the police officers reminded me to keep it civil and made their exit after I told them I was leaving soon to stay at my sister's house. When I asked who the child's father was, she claimed she didn't know. I asked if there were that many guys she was sleeping with, or did she just not know his name. I asked how many times had she cheated on me between pregnancies, to which she said it was just the 2 of them. I told her that I had said earlier if she didn't tell the whole truth that I was done. I reminded her I also told her that I wouldn't raise someone else's child. and that she had better figure out who the real father was because I wasn't paying child support for someone else's baby. She wanted to know what we were going to tell our daughter, and I said that was up to her because this was her mess and I wasn't taking the blame or cleaning it up for her. I drafted a couple of emails last week, one for our friends and family with copies of all the test results and reasons why I was asking for a divorce, the other for my wife with copies of the same tests along with what I knew and things that I had told her previously. I had to run it through my lawyer and make a couple of edits before she signed off on it. I sent copies to all our friends and relatives when she pulled into the driveway this afternoon. Most of the feedback has been one-sided and very colorful. In the end, I told her if she had been truthful we might have been able to work things out, but I couldn't trust a lying serial cheater, and I told her if she had gotten her tubes tied instead of me getting a vasectomy she might have got away with it. I told her she needed to get a lawyer so we could move forward and start to heal. Update 2. We had our second meeting with the lawyers today and we signed off on almost everything except the house. Still waiting for an appraisal to come back and figure out the split. Motions got filed today and a court-ordered paternity test was scheduled for all three of us. Since STBXW didn't fight me on everything, we filed a no-fault divorce petition if everything goes right. I get the house back on February 15th and the divorce will be final on April 5th. The lawyers did a better job keeping us separated and the conversation between the two of us to a minimum. I was a little worried when she came in, pale and with no energy to speak of. I couldn't tell if it was lack of sleep or maybe overmedicated. She just stared out the windows as the lawyers read everything to us before we signed some of the papers. Walking out felt like I had shed a giant weight from around my neck. Hour got me signed up for therapy tomorrow. My boss had put a bottle of champagne on my desk, offered me some time off if I needed it, but I told him I was excited to get back to work.